Chapter 27 of the Narrative of Sojourner Truth by Olive Gilbert and Sojourner Truth. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Holly Jensen. Chapter 27. Some of Her Views and Reasonings. As soon as Isabella saw God as an all-powerful, all-pervading spirit, she became desirous of hearing all that had been written of him, and listened to the account of the creation of the world and its first inhabitants, as contained in the first chapters of Genesis, with peculiar interest. For some time she received it all literally, though it appeared strange to her that God worked by the day, got tired, and stopped to rest, etc. But after a little time she began to reason upon it thus: why, if God works by the day, and one day's work tires him, and he is obliged to rest either from weariness or on account of darkness, or if he waited for the cool of the day to walk in the garden because he was inconvenienced by the heat of the sun, why then it seems that God cannot do as much as I can, for I can bear the sun at noon, and work several days and nights in succession without being much tired. Or if he rested nights because of the darkness, it is very queer that he should make the night so dark that he could not see himself. If I had been God, I would have made the night light enough for my own convenience, surely. But the moment she placed this idea of God by the side of the impression she had once so suddenly received of his inconceivable greatness and entire spirituality, that moment she exclaimed mentally, "No, God does not stop to rest, for he is a spirit, and cannot tire. He cannot want for light, for he hath all light in himself. And if God is all in all, and worketh all in all, as I have heard them read, then it is impossible he should rest at all. For if he did, every other thing would stop and rest too. The waters would not flow, and the fishes could not swim, and all motion must cease. God could have no pauses in his work, and he needed no Sabbaths of rest. Man might need them, and he should take them when he needed them, whenever he required rest. As it regarded the worship of God, he was to be worshipped at all times and in all places, and one portion of time never seemed to her more holy than another. These views, which were the results of the workings of her own mind, assisted solely by the light of her own experience and very limited knowledge, were for a long time after their adoption closely locked in her own breast, fearing lest their avowal might bring upon her the imputation of infidelity, the usual charge preferred by all religionists against those who entertain religious views and feelings differing materially from their own. If from their own sad experience they are withheld from shouting the cry infidel, they fail not to see and to feel, aye, and to say, that the dissenters are not of the right spirit, and that their spiritual eyes have never been unsealed. While traveling in Connecticut, she met a minister with whom she held a long discussion on these points, as well as on various other topics, such as the origin of all things, especially the origin of evil, at the same time bearing her testimony strongly against a paid ministry. He belonged to that class, and as a matter of course as strongly advocated his own side of the question. I had forgotten to mention in its proper place a very important fact, that when she was examining the Scriptures, she wished to hear them without comment, but if she employed adult persons to read them to her, and she asked them to read a passage over again, they invariably commenced to explain by giving her their version of it, and in this way they tried her feelings exceedingly. In consequence of this, she ceased to ask adult persons to read the Bible to her, and substituted children in their stead. Children, as soon as they could read distinctly, would reread the same sentence to her as often as she wished, and without comment, and in that way she was enabled to see what her own mind could make out of the record, and that, she said, was what she wanted, and not what others thought it to mean. She wished to compare the teachings of the Bible with the witness within her, and she came to the conclusion that the Spirit of truth spoke in those records, but that the recorders of those truths had intermingled with them ideas and suppositions of their own. This is one among the many proofs of her energy and independence of character. When it became known to her children that Sojourner had left New York, they were filled with wonder and alarm. Where could she have gone, and why had she left, were questions no one could answer satisfactorily. Now their imaginations painted her as a wandering maniac, and again they feared she had been left to commit suicide, and many were the tears they shed at the loss of her. But when she reached Berlin, Connecticut, she wrote to them by amanuensis, informing them of her whereabouts, and waiting an answer to her letter, thus quieting their fears and gladdening their hearts once more with assurances of her continued life and her love. End of chapter 27. Recording by Holly Jensen.